in the United States Capitol complex in the Rayburn House office building. A lot of history around here. Unfortunately, we're adding to that history in not a positive way right now in the Congress. As I sit here, the government is shut down and Congress is not in session because the speaker has canceled this week's votes. We do have what's called a pro forma session. I won't bore you with a parliamentarian process tomorrow on Friday. So if when you hear we're not in session, there is a pro forma session tomorrow, and it's got to do with long-standing tradition. So I wanted to do this because I'm here. Democrats were here for this week to work to do what we could while the government is shut down. No Republicans are here that I'm aware of. I've been here for 3 days now, and I've been around the campus and Republican office are in the hallway around me. So they're not here. When people say get back to work and try to do something, negotiate, that's all possible, but we need to physically be here. Certainly there's digital communication, but my history, that's not nearly the same in times like this. You need these human engagements with people who disagree with you, but you establish relationships with them. You understand that you represent different parts of the country. You reflect those values, but at moments like this, historically, fortunately for this country, at our best moments, members in this institution in particular relied on those personal connections where you could have conversations and reach the greater good and compromise in a way that didn't compromise your principles. In my view, that's eminently doable. Unfortunately, the way this has been being negotiated at this point in history is driven from the White House. Republicans are afraid to deviate at all, from my perspective, from his perspective. And it's fueled by a very rigid, almost religious, sort of, from my perspective, view of this country and its founding and what they're motivated to go back to. And in my view, that's to eliminate the historical social contract that Jefferson and Hamilton talked about at the founding of this country. And that's that relationship in human nature and in governance between personal responsibilities and our responsibilities to one another. Humans as a species are not the fastest, strongest species on the planet, but how we evolved and how we evolved to be dominant on this planet in many ways, in most ways, I suppose, in terms of sheer power, it was our ability to work together. And this is evolutionary in my view, and there's a lot of good history and neurological history about how that worked. All of that is to say, we succeed when we figure out how to reach out to each other and help one another, but we also have to be personally responsible. And in that context, this is balance that the Greeks talked about, the Romans talked about. That's part of mythology for thousands of years in different governed countries or societies, I should say. And America's done a remarkable job at this over our almost 250 years of existence, but we have also failed, notably in the Civil War, obviously, but in other times. And we are one of those moments where we're literally trying to find out how great a failure this is. And I believe that it has the potential to be hyperbole, or it has the potential, as somebody who likes to read history and I think is well versed in it, we have the potential to end American democracy either completely or a portion of it. And we've been through these struggles before, but this balance between our responsibility to one another and our individual desires and needs is reflected on how we govern. And right here, we're at one of those moments. So you can't govern, I don't think, if don't have a basis of trust. And this is just how we work as a species. If you trust somebody, you reach out to them. If you don't trust them, you're more resistant to it, biologically, chemically, environmentally, and genetically. And this is one of those moments that's driven by a lot of things, I think, our binary nature around the world and in this institution, this country. So we've got to get through this. I am more than willing to talk to anyone as one of 535 members of Congress to figure out how we get out of this, but you have to have someone who you trust on the other side, not because you disagree with them ideologically, but you trust them as a human being. There are members on the other side that I have had that trust and still stuck to my principal core in terms of my progressive view and the social contract. But right now, that trust is broken down in a way that I have never seen before. And I attribute that largely to the leader of the party, this president. Sorry, clinically, I believe he's a sociopath, and his ability to communicate with one another is because he doesn't trust other people for, amongst other things. And that's a problem when you're negotiating and trying to negotiate in good faith. His idea of doing a deal in this context is reflective of his life experience, and that's not good for this application at this point in the country's history. So we got to find a way out of this. To the more specific problem we have right now, just in a nutshell, this started when he was president the first time and they had control of both houses. In my view, that's when their big bill was being the largest transfer of wealth in the history of the country from 90% of the population to the top 1% or less. That was time limited and the time came up. So their second bill, big bill, is the big ugly bill. And for everything that was talked about in there, awful things, cutting Medicare, attacking the healthcare system, eliminating SNAP, all these great programs, that took up a lot of our time, and legitimately, all of those things are the things we should be spending time on. But part of his diversion was that this was the transfer of wealth to people who make hundreds of millions of dollars a year, and already at a time when our concentration of wealth is the highest or near the highest, close to the Gilded Age in the history of this country. Lots of quotes about this. Louis Brandeis, famous justice of the Supreme Court, said famously, we can either have democracy or we can have a concentration of this country's wealth in the hands of a few people, but you can't have both. Lincoln famously said, labor, meaning wages, and capital, meaning investments, must always be balanced in America. And if they're not in favor of capital investments, those who have money and don't work or don't work daily for their living, if it ever gets too skewed, this is Lincoln, on the capital side, you've lost democracy. So we have a lot of history how that's bad for democracy, and a lot of wonderful writing about it. Thomas Piketty won the Pulitzer Prize for his work Capital, which was just a very dry economic 500-page tome that I've read multiple times. I think I've got it sitting here right here on my desk. I liked it by the number of markings on it. I refer to it a lot. Piketty's history is in the history of the world in developed countries and capitalism. They work really well when this is balanced. When they don't, there's inevitably a social implosion, and that's where we're there. January 6th was a manifestation of that. And of course, it's not a good thing for us or historically. So how do we correct that? And this right now is about, it may well be the tipping point where we come to a confrontation. Hopefully it will be a peaceful one that will be solved as we have at our best moments through the legislative process and through democracy without violence and criminal activity. Although in my view, in the view of the court so far, the president has ignored the law over and over again. Democracy Forward, you can go to their website, a nonpartisan nonprofit that does a lot of work on this, tells you in real time how many times his executive orders and others have been challenged in court, and how often, and in real time, how the courts have said what he's done is unconstitutional, i.e. illegal. Last time I checked, it was over 90% of the cases. And these are appointees that he's appointed as well who've made these observations. So we had these two big bills, and then we had the big ugly bill. It continued this transfer of wealth indefinitely into the future. There's no timeline. And then they paid for it largely by attacking good programs, in particular Medicaid and SNAP, the Supplemental Nutrition Program you've heard about a lot, but it's much larger than that. It's transferring wealth from 90% of the American public to the top 1% at a time when the concentration of wealth is already gross, obscene, and very dangerous by historians of note, economic and otherwise. So we've got to fix this, folks. And that's why we're doing what we're doing as Democrats right now. We will negotiate in good faith, but you didn't negotiate in good faith with the big ugly bill. The huge thing, you didn't negotiate in good faith. Not one Democrat voted for that big bill of transfer of wealth the first time and the second time. So what we want is we want them to come to the table with how do we fix what you did that increased this disease in this country of obscene wealth concentration. How do we get back to that? It's not socialism. It's a mixed market, free, democratic, capitalistic model. I'm a former business owner. I believe in it, but it has to have guardrails for all of us. And in this instance, it's for guardrails who created Citizens United, have packed the courts, and unfortunately created independent expenditures because of Citizens United. And that freezes my Republican colleagues from doing the right thing because they're afraid of being primaried, and they have good reason because there's plenty of examples of that happening. So here we are. And I will explain this in the PowerPoint right now and end this little introduction. But I want to explain that it's not just about what they say is a clean CR. It's not a clean CR, mumbo jumbo CR. Most people don't know what it is. Continuing resolution. We've had too many of those. We're going to talk about it in the PowerPoint. There is a process that Congress adheres to when we're doing the right, thoughtful appropriations and budget process, and we haven't for quite some time consistently, and we're stuck. So when they say it's clean CR, that's just political consultants mumbo jumbo of trying to deceive you of something much more complicated than clean CR. That simple question. It's a dirty, dirty budget process that leads to pain and suffering and threatens democracy's very existence. So that's why we are holding out. With that, we're going to go to the PowerPoint. And to the degree I know how many people are out there watching. So this pop-up we did, it is beginning at 9:30 your time, 12:30 our time. But I wanted to do this just to be able to communicate with you. I know most people don't have the time to join us live, but we're doing this live. And of course, we're going to have this available, so as we do with all our town halls, for you to visit. We are in the process of trying to establish a in-person town hall as soon as we can in the next few years. Setting up a town hall in person has become more of an art form now, and you've got to be really thoughtful given the number of people come out and the security we are required to have now. So we want these to be civil, peaceful, successful, but it takes more time than it did when we started these. This sort of a demonstration of how our national discourse has even in an area like ours, has become harder to have things like town halls. As many of you know, I'm very proud of the fact that I've had more town halls in the last 11 years I've been in Congress than any other member of Congress, and I particularly like in person. But we also use this digitally, and this was an opportunity for me to come be back here, but give you sort of real time where I perceive we are. So let's give you a little history first. For those of you who might have watched our last town hall on this broken budget process, this is a very detailed PowerPoint. So I'm going to try to go through it as succinctly as possible, but also let you who are watching this maybe later in the day or in the week, avail yourself to this PowerPoint. So this is the way it usually works. This is really how it's supposed to work. There is a prescribed process at all legislative bodies that I've been involved with, from the City Council to the Board of Supervisors to the California Legislature and to Congress. And process is important. Sometimes people get frustrated with it, particularly in our day and age where the internet gets you, you just want a soundbite and be done with it. You can't budget the United States government and all of the other government agencies in a way that's transparent. So you're making sure there's as little or no inefficiencies or corruption in it. And that creates a process. And sometimes people get frustrated with that, but I think there's a value to it. Can we get it more transparent? Can we get it more efficient, more direct, simpler to digest? Absolutely. But this process has worked when we do it. So the president puts out the outline of his budget. Remember that the House of Representatives, the founders wanted the people's house, the house, the branch of government that in the house that is closest to the people, meaning the House, not the Senate. In their view, all budget issues should start required by the Constitution in the House. So it requires more work. But the president gives an outline of what he wants the budget to be. Sorry, lights went out. And that's a framework for then the Congress to start and the public to talk about it. So January does an outline, February submits his official budget on the first Monday of February, and the Congressional Budget Office, that's CBO, submits it to Congress. The CBO, Congressional Budget Office, is designed and set up and is, in large part, nonpartisan. It's supposed to give us information, Republican, Democrats, conservatives, progressives, liberal, their financial analysis of what the president's budget means for the country and for the federal government and for the other governmental agencies. Historically, great respect, but now they're being attacked by Republicans who don't want them, in my view, to tell us the truth. When I was in the restaurant business, I relied on my CPA to look at my numbers. And if I had a question about my profit and loss statement, my pouring costs, my food costs, my employee cost, and both in every aspect of my restaurants, the kitchen, the floor, the bar, the back of the house stuff, your fixed cost, rent, your insurance, all those things. I would look at those weekly and I would try to figure out, am I making money? Where am I not making the margins I want? That's sort of what the CBO does. But you want this, in the business case, you want your financial advisors, like your CPA in my case, they come in and say, this is what your revenue was, this is what your payables were, you're out of whack. So then you go under and try to figure out how, where that is, if you're not priced right, if people are stealing, whether it's purveyors, employees, customers, and you try to get under that. So that's the analogy from my background in the restaurant business. I was sometimes both pejoratively and positively referred to as a numbers person. I like it. And then we had wonderful, talented people in our kitchen in particular to create the product, but you had to make money at it. The analogy to CBO in February and March is you listen to your CPA. If you don't, and you just do it based on your opinion, you get in trouble, whether it's the federal government or small business or your house, your mortgage payments and all that things. You try to manage the very different in terms of complexity, obviously, but there is an analogy to be made. So then you go into the clock as you go around. Now you're at 3 o'clock as you look at this and you start the appropriations process in the Congress. And then as you come around, as you get the work product, you're getting advice all through this from committee staff on the appropriations committees, both Republicans and Democrats, and they're all giving you analysis, and then you're getting analysis from outside groups. And now we have a lot of outside groups who are both very far right, very far left, and in between, giving their own analysis. All of them have varying degrees of subjectivity, in my point, from my perspective. So then you get through this and you come back to where you submit it. The Office of Management and Budget submits a final request. They're in the administration, different from the CBO. Congressional Budget Office is under the jurisdiction of the Congress. Office of Management and Budget is in the administration. And then you get a final work product and you vote on it. So that's the way it's supposed to work. Let's go to how it has worked recently. And that's the slide I spent the most time on. All of these, I'm not going to read each one, but if you look at it, you can go back and look through the process. And if you have any questions, you can email us and we'll give you more detail. But this is a simple overview and it's very consistent what I just said. The last time all regular appropriations bills were passed by October 1st. Deadline was 1996. So we haven't been adhering to the process for a long time, 34 years, with different variations of how close we are to the process and the continuing resolution. So this is a problem that started in 1994 during the Gingrich Revolution. Next. So again, this is more historical. I support legislation, which means I'm an author, co-author of, and I support any legislation will remove the threat of government shuts down by allowing agencies to continue operations in the event of a lapse of appropriations. What's happening right now is ridiculously inefficient by anybody's standards. It's cruel, and it has a huge cost, not just on humans. I've had so many cases of federal employees and people who rely on them contacting the office and telling just remarkable stories. If you have them, contact us because we want to convey that to the general public. We will be as anonymous or as much as you want to be, but these are very, 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 very valuable stories because people forget that these are real human beings with real challenges, but also have value to us. Most people in the public sector get up to work every day and perform great work. I come from the private sector. I had a perception when I was younger that everyone in the private sector was more efficient. I have come to appreciate that that's not true. Organizations, human activities have a degree of commitment by all of the people who work there. Some are excellent some days, most of us are in the middle. We do the best we can, and sometimes we're really good on some things, and sometimes we're not. And then we have people who are lower performers. We have learned a lot about that in human existence and in government on how do we make sure we have excellence. And I'm a firm believer is there's no more important responsibility. If you are an employee of a government agency in the United States of America, you have a moral, ethical responsibility to be excellent at what you do, because we all believe in this. It's what ties us together. And in my time, I have found that that's the overwhelming culture within these institutions. Are there institutions that don't do that? Absolutely, that's the reality. In the private sector, there are as well. The pressures on in the private sector, I'll use my analogy, in the restaurant business, are very extreme. And when I was in the restaurant business, the rule of thumb in California was independent restaurants, their life at 90, I think it was 90% of them, 80% of them, were 6 months. So for every 10 independent restaurants that opened, 8 of them were not in business any longer after 6 months. For those 20% that survived, their life expectancy was a little over 6 years. I was lucky. I was in the restaurant business for 35, almost 40 years, and I was successful. Did I have challenges? Absolutely. Did I have bad employees? Absolutely. Did I have great employees? Fortunately for me, most of the time. You're only as good in any organization as a manager as the people who you work with and you work for and who work for you. So this stereotype about people in the federal government somehow being nameless, faceless bureaucrats getting a paycheck is a myth that unfortunately in our culture has been used for the benefit of people who profit from not having people doing their work, whether it's people who want to pollute and don't want regulators showing up and having them enforce the laws, or historically in our country, if it was people in public safety who were corrupt or not doing their job or only enforcing the law for some people. Next. So this is how tight it is, and this is how separated we are as a country. We are arguably in one of the most separated binary times in our history. That's true, I think, across the world, but this is how tough it is. So you get 219 Republicans right now in the House that I'm in, 214 Democrats, and you have 2 vacancies. So it's very close. At any given time, 2 or 3 people can change the outcome of a vote before anything is even introduced. So Nancy Pelosi was very, very good at counting numbers. The current speaker is not very good at counting numbers, but Nancy was pretty spectacular from a historical aspect. I think she'll be right up there with Henry Clay as one of the great speakers in the history of this country at just being able to get people to a point where you can have work product that's best for everybody. In the Senate, similarly, you can see how close it is right now. So you don't have a lot of room to wiggle, and a few difficult people can sabotage the whole process. And that's been true of the Freedom Caucus. Ideological people who don't understand the complexities of our governance and don't have very good legislative skills. Not to say that I haven't had people I've worked with who are in that group, but as a general rule, you've got some people there who like the power of being able to sabotage any kind of compromise. And are there people in the Democratic caucus who have those tendencies? Yes. But in my view, it's not asymmetrical. It's proportionate to the far right who are causing this problem. Next. So here we are. We've just got 3 of 12 spending bills, and it's important to remember against the big ugly bill. What that did was it went back through bills that had already been approved, and it changed what was funded for this year. So how do you trust people? This is part of the problem right now. We want to make sure that the President of the United States cannot go back in and just willy-nilly or not willy-nilly directed at his perceived political opponents and take away programs that work, that have been gone through the process, have been appropriated based on value for this country. And now we have a president who goes on national television and says on communication, I am going to punish the areas where my political opponents come from. This is what created the Civil War, folks, this kind of attitude. And there's the underlying cultural problems we have in terms of race that are still part of our history. A lot of people don't like to hear that, but it's just, that's part of our history. And I'm a believer in one of the things we haven't done well in American history and teaching it is being honest about our legacies, all our wonderful legacies and overcoming our challenges, but also being honest about our undermining challenges in this country. How's that a way to say it? And there are a lot of them. It's human nature. It's not to say I accept it, but we've got to be honest about it in order to address it. Whether you're an individual, we have to be honest about our weaknesses and shortcomings, or you're a country. And I believe America is the greatest country in the world and in the history of this world at this scale for certain. And a great country can face up to its sins and, in my view, our less aspiring parts of our history. That's the only way to overcome them. So long diatribe there, but I've got time, not a huge audience. So this is the broken problem. Where we are now, we're stuck, and we need to have a compromise. We can't pay our bills. We're paying some of them that are on continuing resolutions. The president has agreed to take money out of the existing Department of Defense to pay our military. I think they should get paid. I think there shouldn't be any question that people who are working, particularly people who are defending our country or air traffic controllers, there's no way that they shouldn't be paid. And how do we get people to go in to the military or federal employment, which is part of, I think, the evil genius of the people who are doing this? How do you get young people to go into these fields when they see what's happening right now? If we want the country to work, we start to do proper oversight, and we trust one another in the process. And people who work for the federal government, like any employer, want to work for somebody who, when they work, they show up, they get paid. Same thing in the restaurant business, in the private sector. You don't get good people to work for you if they don't feel like you're going to get paid, and if you're not treated with respect and you don't have a level of trust. Next. Again, this is where we are now. The last 3 bullets, you've heard a lot of what we've said. They're attacking healthcare, Americans' healthcare, to pay for very wealthy, obscenely wealthy people. The stupidity, the cruelty, and the inefficiency of it is staggering in my mind. America has the most expensive healthcare system, such as it is, of all the developed countries in the world. We're about 18%, last time I checked, of GDP. The closest after that, I believe, are the Japanese, much better outcomes, and they're about 9%. Germans, most of the EU countries, developed countries, are much lower than that. So, and they have better outcomes. Life expectancy, acuity of diseases, the seriousness of diseases. So we don't have one of the problems is we have an extremely costly, inefficient healthcare system. It can be great. I'm a living example of that. I'm alive because the American healthcare system and research by taxpayers at the National Cancer Institute. For every $1 American taxpayers put in the National Cancer Institute for research, we get $2.56 back, according to CBO and other evaluations. So these are good investments. I don't know what some of my Republican colleagues understand about return on investment, but apparently they didn't run a business. $1 in the National Cancer Institute, the taxpayers get $2.56 back. I'd invest in that all the time. National Institutes for Health are similar. So in addition to eliminating healthcare for millions of Americans, according to CBO, Kaiser Family Foundation, don't believe me, go to their websites. Somewhere between 14 and 17 million Americans will lose their Medicaid, Medi-Cal in California. And all that affects everything else. It affects Medicare, it affects the delivery of services, it affects private health insurance. By the way, for all the trolls out there, Congress doesn't get health insurance, gold-plated health insurance. I don't have that. I am a county retiree, and when I was younger, I decided to go into the Contra Costa Health Plan. They're fabulous. They're just fabulous. But I paid into it. So for all you trolls out there, I know it's hard for you to condemn Freudian slip. Understand that the things you've been fed, you should check to see if they're accurate or not. So we're just really ripping the healthcare system in the United States, which was already inefficient, with parts of it being genius, the providers, the specialists, the primary care doctors, nurses, all that. You've got amazing people go into this field, who, by the way, it's harder to get them to go in this field because of what they did in the big ugly bill and what they're doing as a consequence of eliminating the subsidies for the Affordable Care Act, where 20 million people will see an increase in their health care under the Affordable Care Act. And shockingly, as a former small business person, a lot of those people are people who are self-employed and own small businesses. So it's just, we're stuck in this, folks, and that's why we're fighting. So this is where we are now. Again, I won't repeat what I've already said because I've talked longer than I'd wanted to originally. Next slide. So again, I've mentioned a lot of this, just did in the last comments, but this is why we're fighting. People will die if we roll over and accept this, and I'm not going to do that. The vote right now, I already voted against the bill, the CR. It's in the Senate. So simple majority to approve it in the House rules. I voted against it, adamantly against it, so I'm already a record. It's now in the Senate. The Senate requires 60 votes, so it needs Republicans, if you remember that slide, on the or Democrats to agree with the Republicans. They are holding out because they can't vote for it, the same reason I couldn't. We don't want this shutdown. We didn't cause this shutdown. The President of the United States and his advisors, the Speaker and the President of the Senate, all these Republicans, if you can't understand how many votes you need in both houses to pass it, you shut it down. You wrote these things up, you crammed through the previous big ugly bill that only required a simple majority. The stupidity of different bills and different, it's not stupidity, it's just we had a better time. So they only required a simple majority to approve the big ugly bill because the rules were meant to be that it was an urgency. This administration, this leadership takes their emergency and applies it to all of us, just like the courts are saying about his deployment of military troops to cities. They're saying over and over again is what he's doing in that regard is illegal and stopping it. What they're doing on the previous one, violated the spirit of the law. And the reason why it was a simple majority, it was meant to be an emergency. You'd go back in and change what you already appropriated. It wasn't. Well, such as it is, it's now in place. In this one, they need a supermajority to get it passed. So it requires Democrats. They knew they had to get Democrats. They're doing it this way because it's extortion. And they want the American people to believe that they're innocent. And now we're holding out. We're holding out because we've got a gun to the head of the American public and to their health care. People will die. Significant people will die, in my view, if we approve this. And the cost for our healthcare system, our country, and our gross national product will go up. So this is as principled a time as ever I've been elected office. We can't vote for this. And the Senate is holding out appropriately. If they want to negotiate in good faith, come back, negotiate. We'll negotiate. But we're not going to do it at this cost. Negotiation requires two parties to come together on a compromise. This is not a compromise. It's take it or leave it in the extreme. And if you don't, we're going to blame you for ruining the American public. Okay, so why we're fighting is to take care of the things I already mentioned. And then the chaos is, and this is a plan. This is 2025. They want to destroy a lot of things, but their focus for years, Mr. Vogt, the head of Office of Management and Budget, and others of his ilk, they want to destroy the New Deal. They want to destroy the Great Society. They want to destroy Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security. They'll say they don't. They do, is my view. This is survival of the fittest. Go back to Hoover, and the private sector will somehow mysteriously fix all this. This is my opinion. So we've got mass firings, we've got shifting funds within the administration, all of which is illegal. And again, we and our colleagues, our friends on the outside are challenging these and winning the overwhelming number of cases, but it takes time. And the legal process takes time, and the media and the president is expert at this, is focusing on the chaos. So we're focused on stopping him, and we've got to be as in this fight as they are, in my view, as diabolical from their perspective of what this government should be, which is as little government as possible, and everybody gets out and somehow survives on their own. It's nice if you've got big mansions with lots of equity and security people, I suppose. Next. Again, we've added these recently. All of these things are illegal, but we're fighting them in court, and we will continue to. As I've mentioned, we had a town hall with the executive director of Democracy Forward. Go to just Google them and go to their website, their social media, and they'll tell you in real time the legal status of every case. Next. So this is just a chart trying to visually show you what we're fighting for and what they are. You can see the red, the one big beautiful bill, and the big ugly bill, which is Act 2 of the transfer of wealth. Just astronomical. Our rescue plan 1.8 got us through COVID, in spite of all the opposition to that, and kept small businesses alive. I've talked to dozens of small businesses in the district because I came from small business. When I go out to eat, when I go in to see them, I'm always asking questions, and I'll tell you, they will tell you, and the analysis is they couldn't have stayed in business during COVID if we didn't pass this bill. And now there were businesses who failed and left, particularly in the restaurant business, which was particularly difficult. I'm glad I wasn't in the restaurant business for this, but there are a lot of them in our district that survived. And the reason they did is because we got them through that. And we all paid for that. Personally, I would defend that any day because I think it was the right decision from an economic standpoint and from a moral decision. So this just demonstrate where I believe our priorities are skewed. between both parties. And this is not an accident. This is very thought out from people at the Coke Network and the Heritage Foundation. So my opinion. Next. So I finally got through it, used up almost 3/4 of the time. So we knew we weren't going to have a lot of questions. So if you watch this later, please feel free to submit questions. We will get back to them, back to you, as long as we have a contact, email or a physical address. So thank you. If you can submit your questions, and YouTube comments in the YouTube comments, if you're watching on YouTube, our staff's getting them right now, and I'll try to answer them as succinctly as possible. And if I don't, we will respond as time allows us. Again, as long as we have your contact information. I'm going to put my Google, my readers on. From Angela in Walnut Creek, why hasn't Representative-elect Grijalva been sworn in yet? Because the speaker has canceled the meetings. So you have to be in the House chambers under our post-COVID rules, and you get sworn in public. He has refused. He's canceled all the scheduled meetings, and I would attribute that to two things. He wants to stop Congresswoman-elect Grijalva from taking the seat that her dad held. And that signature on a discharge petition would be the signature required to get the Epstein files. We want the Epstein files. I don't care who's in them. I want the American public to see what happened in that horrible, horrible environment, where it certainly seems like to me that a very, very wealthy, entitled group of sick individuals were breaking the law and certainly doing the most vile things that their position and power and their money allowed them to do. If I'm wrong, then let's see it. But the President of the United States was part of that from everything I can see. And the fact that he is fighting so aggressively to keep this, I mean, if you don't have anything to hide, especially something as egregious as this, you would want it all out there. So let the American public decide. And again, Justice Brandeis famously said, the antidote for corruption in America is always sunshine. This is a classic moment in America for Brandeis's admonition, wisdom to be determined. When she gets signed in, the sooner the better, then that will allow us to get to the truth. My fear is that the people who were involved in that horrible, horrible situation, people with entitlement, hundreds of millions of dollars, whatever they did, my sense is they're probably doing what they've done before, which is trying to buy their way out of it, getting people who they are afraid of being able to be witnesses and verify what happened, may have happened, did happen. That's part of our process. Everybody's allowed due process. But my fear is that they're using this time, not just to stop it, ultimately to stop it. Because my sense it is, if this gets out, even the most ardent supporters of the current administration, and if it's as bad as it seems like it is by their refusal to address it and fighting with all of their immoral and unethical behavior, it would describe me just as a human who has dealt with human nature for some period of time. I assume they're guilty. It's just human nature, folks. If you're innocent, why not let it get out? And yes, people will ascribe different things to it, and maybe take advantage of it. Maybe people will see it in different lights, but hiding it is not a good thing. So that's the reason she's not being seated. The reason is to keep the American public from seeing what's in the Epstein files. Thanks, Michael. Victoria from Concord, how likely do you think it is that Chuck Schumer cave, I'm reading a quote, to the Republicans and vote for their spending plan as he did earlier this year? Well, he shouldn't. I was very much against what he did earlier. I think I understand because he and Senator Durbin are thoughtful. Senator Durbin from Illinois, so he's the number 2 in the Senate, and Richard Durbin, I consider a friend, was very close to my predecessor, roommates. They're principled people, so they were challenged. Do we do the right thing and save the country from what's happening? Or do we do the right thing and fight? And I disagreed with what they did because of the timing. Every time those of us in the Democratic caucuses on the side in the House and the Senate have gone to them with a solution, they've come back and asked for more. I liken it to Lucy with the football. How many times does somebody lie to you before you say, I'm not going there anymore? You want to come in good faith, then we'll negotiate. So personally, I'm not going to cave. So if it was another bill, I would have to consider it on the merits. So the way the process works, if they come up with something to get the votes necessary, that bill, which is different from the bill that I voted for, would come back to us to vote. It would go to conferences called, so people on both sides would be able to negotiate in a process that's designed for the public to understand what's happening. And then there'd be a public vote. But what we want is stop the attack on American workers and their health care. One of the biggest things about all of this is it's not just healthcare, as important as that is. If you're a small business, if you're a worker, even with good healthcare, your copays, how much your premiums may increase in private, public healthcare plans, which, by the way, I'm the ranking member on the committee with jurisdiction over that. That's 120 million people who come within our jurisdiction, and that's your employer-employee health insurance. That's failing right now too. We can see premiums going up even before the subsidies go away, if that's what happens, if we give up. And the quality of care is going down. So we've had public hearings on my committee showing how many denials have happened of claims traditionally accepted under the contract you have with your insurance company. That I've had doctors all over the country call me and tell me, I've been doing this simple claim against this insurance company or with this insurance company for years. They've always approved it. Now they're denying them. So they're raising the cost and the quality of care they're eliminating. An interesting side effect, we only have one inspector for every 14,000, I think, health plans in the United States for the claims that are coming in to investigate, to hold them accountable. You can go to court, but how many Americans have the ability to hire an attorney and go to court? So this is diabolical. It's not just your health, as bad as that is, but it's your work. How do you get up in the morning every day and know you're going to be able to pay your mortgage, raise your kids, have any kind of pension, and pay your copay or your payment? And they know this. So it's about healthcare, but it's about all your health. American workers are already being, sorry, the expression, taken advantage of in an extreme way because of concentration of wealth, and they have no defense. And the Republicans have eliminated the people who are supposed to defend you. And we're fighting to keep them. Next. Brian from Antioch, I've noticed the Senate has been voting throughout the shutdown. Why is the House not doing the same? Are there different rules for two different chambers? Yes, I mentioned this. We already passed this bill on a purely partisan vote. It only required a simple majority in the Senate. It went over in the House, I should say. It went over the Senate. It requires 60 votes in the Senate. They don't have 60 Republican votes for this, so that's why it's stuck. And what the Republican leadership are doing, they're keeping them in there and they're voting over and over again on the same bill. So it keeps pressure on them. I think we should be in session. We should be in session anyways. We're scheduled to this week, and and last week he canceled those to do normal work. Personally, I think we should be here, and I think for me, we shouldn't get paid until we pass a budget. So we've got to change all of this, folks. But for right now, good question. There are separate rules for both houses. We've already voted on it. And while all the attention is in the Senate, but for reasons I don't fully understand, the media doesn't explain it or get through that it requires Democratic votes in the Senate. Why they didn't negotiate this before and have a negotiation is why they shut the government down. If they had been talking to us for months or weeks or even days, they could have accommodated this. The answer to this, I think, in a large way is we have an option. And we tried to submit this as a bill last week, and they wouldn't even recognize us on the House floor. And the option is do a continuing resolution while we negotiate, but keep all of this in place and undo what you've done in the big ugly bill when it undermines the American healthcare system. Let us go through hearings. Let's have the public see what we're doing, and then we'll have a decision. But keep the level where it is now. So when they say it's a clean CR, it's not. They already took money away from bills that were appropriated in a clean CR with bipartisan work, and now they want to make it worse. They're lying. Okay, don't have any more questions. I really just want to thank you all for joining. For those of you who watch this in real time, live, thank you so much. Didn't have a lot of time, but I thought it was important that I'm here and I express my opinion and enter in as much of a dialogue as I can with you. Please feel free, if you're watching this later, or always, if you think of another question, submit it to us. We work very hard for you. I've got a wonderful crew of people, full-time employees and some part-time on occasion, who work in our Walnut Creek District Office, our Antioch office, District Office, and here in our office that I'm sitting in my office on Capitol Hill. Thank you so much for giving me the honor of representing you in Congress. Thank you for always having my back. To those of you who disagree with me, I will sit down with anyone and have a civil conversation. You may be able to persuade me. Now, know that I have a job that I'm on the East Coast when the majority has us here, and even when they don't. I'm here now, even though they're not. So the logistics of me being on the West Coast and being very active here, but being active at home. I believe in discourse. I'm happy to go to Republicans, conservatives, as long as we have a civil discourse. If you're threatening me or threatening others, that doesn't work. We can do it in the context of strongly held conservative and progressive liberal views. This is when the country's worked at its best. You may be right. You may be able to persuade me at some level, but not with threats. And this is what this is. So feel free to contact us. We are in the process of setting up a in-person town hall, and we'll let you know when we're going to do that. I will continue to be as available as I can. I will be back in the district this weekend. And I hope to be here next week as scheduled in session. We will find out tomorrow. This is how bad the leadership is. Whether we are in session as scheduled next week or whether the speaker is going to cancel it again to keep Representative Grijalva from being sworn in, which I think is one of the big motivations to hide what is in the Epstein files from you. We get that one vote and it starts to open the doors, and to keep it locked down as long as the American public realizes and listens to who's responsible for this. It's the President of the United States and the people who are in the majority of both houses. And I say that in the context of the Senate. They knew they needed 60 votes to get this done. There's a way to do it. Bargain in good faith, knowing that we will hold to our principles when this is so unprincipled. We're not going to accede to your extortion. Thank you so much, as always. Thank you for the privilege of representing you for the last 10 more than a half years in the United States House of Representatives. It is an extraordinary honor, and I take it in my soul that it's an honor. And again, whether you agree with me or not, I'm willing to have that discussion, and I will do it as quickly and as easily as possible. Just understand that there's only one of me for 750,000 people I represent, and a lot of my time requires me to be full-time here in DC and full-time in the district. Thanks so much. Please be faithful to this country. We're going to get through this, but we have to stick to our ideals, and we have to respect people who we disagree with. And I would urge people who disagree with me to respect those of us on the other side, that we have a principal position, and it's based on our life experience. And it's about, in this case, caring for American workers, caring for people who don't have a lot of money. Thank you.